We will be recording the speaker's share, but we will turn the recording off after the speaker's share. I'll give you a 5 minutes heads up if that's all right, Sophie.
Sure. Yeah.
So with that, I'll hand it over to you, mate.
Thank you. Thanks. My name's Sophie. I'm an addict.
Sophie.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me to be of service. It's lovely to be here. Lovely to walk in and see some familiar faces. Really nice. I'm not from this area. I live in London. I grew up not far from this area, actually, a long time ago. But all of my recovery has been in London. So yeah, step 4. God, that reading's long. Anyway, so I'm in the middle of writing a step 4. So this is really good. So when I share my clean time, I'm sharing it in the context of I'm X amount years of clean and I'm still needing to do the work. It doesn't stop. So I'm 22 and a half years clean. And this will be my 3rd set of steps. My 2nd one in NA, and then at about, I think it was 5 years clean, when I really needed to go and do some work around relationships, I went into another fellowship for 7 years. And got equal freedom through those 12 steps as I have through Narcotics Anonymous. And you know, my belief. So I do a book study on a Sunday morning, right, with 3 other women, and we're of similar clean time, 1, 2 with slightly more. But what we get to talk about, I mean, that book is fantastic because it tells us about how to live clean. So the Blue Book and the other literature tells us about the disease of addiction and tells us about ourselves. The Living Clean book tells us how to live clean. And I need still to be taught how to live clean. There's stuff that I can do really well. I can get up, I can clean my teeth, I can go to work. You know, there's some real basic stuff that I do and have done for a very long time. And then I guess the struggles actually can be the unmanageability and the feelings still. I never knew about emotional unmanageability when I came into recovery. When my sponsor said that to me, I was like, what? You know, I came in like flatlined. I wasn't even feeling. It wasn't until I started writing the process, until I started the process of writing the steps that, you know, we crack open. We start to, you know, peel the onion. And so there was a part of me that was completely disassociated, which I didn't realise for a period of time. I can't put timelines, it's too long ago, you know, and I'd flip between sobbing in meetings or saying nothing. This isn't a recommendation, okay, but I didn't actively start writing the steps until I was 18 months clean. The biggest probably part of that was my arrogance, and it still served me to point the finger at other people. So I was fearful of looking at myself. I didn't come in on a pink cloud. I sat in meetings and I didn't feel gratitude. Sorry, I didn't. I was removed from society by the police. I didn't sit down one day and think, I'm going to stop using. I got clean in prison. It saved my life going to prison. But I didn't go, oh God, I've had enough, I want to stop using. You know, there wasn't that surrender. The surrender came in prison when I actually I'm left with lifelong consequences because of a relapse. And eventually I surrendered in prison and, I got clean in prison. I take my clean date from the day I went into treatment, which is the 8th of October 2003. I didn't start writing the steps until I was 18 months clean. But once I did start writing, I just carried on. I was saying just before the meeting, my first set of steps was written in complete blind faith. I didn't realise until about 5 years clean that I was sitting in a meeting, many meetings, nodding with identification, but the disease was going, yeah, but. So there was that part of, the disease that was just separating me the whole time until my head popped out of somewhere and and there was the connection, And you might hear me say this a lot during my chair, but it's like, this is not a race, this is a journey. This is a really slow journey. Please don't put pressure on yourself to understand everything, because I don't now. There's real freedom in that, actually. Not that I thought I have to understand everything, but I didn't have a clue. I was in such denial about my life. The disease of addiction, being an addict. I had so much evidence. My step 1 tells me the evidence that I'm an addict. My life was fucked. And I really needed help, and I really needed power greater than myself in my life. And I have that today. I have fully conceded to my innermost self that I'm an addict, thank God, and there's real freedom in that. I wholeheartedly have surrendered and accept I'll be coming to meetings for the rest of my life. I think we are so lucky to have the 12-step programs that we do. I personally do go to other fellowships, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. But I find them as equally as powerful as NA, and the literature is equally as powerful. But NA will always be a home for me. So my current step 4 is all about relationships. The relationship with myself, the relationship with the world, the relationship with work colleagues, relationship with family members. There's nothing about drink or drugs. I mean, the obsession was lifted for me a long, long time ago. I do a Just for Today programme, but I'm super grateful that has been removed. I don't even think about it. I do not even think about it. There's nothing attractive about it. And so my current step 4 is all about those things. And the first thing that I will want to say is if there's anyone that's sitting here and hasn't done a step 4, you'll hear a mixed bag in the rooms. Hold on to the freedom. I mean, you get, so people either go, it's a spiritual awakening. Not to be different, I call it the awakening of the spirit, right? Every single step I write, more is revealed, and it awakens my spirit. And it shows me the disease, it's in its entirety, and it reinforces how much I continue to need a power greater than myself in my life. I take back my will all the time. All the time. Intolerance, judgment, you name it, impatience, control, self-righteousness, perfectionism, I could go on and on. And one of the things that I say to myself, to invite in compassion, because that can still be a bit of a thing to reach, compassion for myself, because of my perfectionism, really, is that I'm a human being. And human beings have flaws. And so I just try and invite that in more and more as I move through my recovery. And that absolutely I wake up with the disease of addiction every single day, but I'm more than the disease of addiction. I couldn't see myself as anything other than this walking ball of the disease of addiction and early recovery. I was so serious. I was so serious. But I came in with some really serious consequences. And, you know, and we all come in with our stuff, right? You know, I was told I might have 5 years to live when I came in at 31. And I'm still here, I'm not 35. Yeah, so you know, it wasn't this pink fluffy cloud and like, yay, I'm clean. So yeah, I've lost my train of thought. Bollocks. Sorry. It's completely gone. Yeah, so yeah, kind of humanness, right? So I hear it said many, many times, you know, it's like, I don't like being judged, so why would I judge others? I am my harshest critic. We don't need others to critique us. If I I want to try and speak about, in this current set of steps, right, what has been revealed, what I'm in touch with that I haven't been able to access in my early recovery, maybe little bits along the way, is a reality of my childhood, which is so my sponsor tells me that my main abuser was my mother. I'm still quite disconnected from anything under the age of 10, and that there was a huge amount of emotional neglect. So as I've and you know, like, there's every single member of my family other than my mother in this current step 4. And I don't think that's because of denial. I've done 2 sets of step and a heap of therapy around my family, and my second set of steps completely removed any blaming of them, of how my upbringing was and how I thought they should be and everything like that, because my first set of steps was all about resentment and anger. And I heard this in a meeting recently and it stayed with me. Somebody shared that prior to coming into NA and prior to working the steps, they saw and lived their life through the triangle of self-obsession. So they had no concept of like what harm we caused, you know, and sometimes there wasn't harm by us, but that really stayed with me recently. So the anger and the resentment towards my parents was in the first step, the first set of steps. The second set of steps, that completely went. I let go of all approval seeking at the age of, you know, whatever it was, 40 something. I stopped seeking approval from my parents as an adult. Real freedom. It was painful in your 40s, and you're still looking for approval from parents. So more freedom. And I had absolute compassion. Nothing but compassion for my parents. My dad, right, he was 10 years old as a kid in the First World War. He was evacuated from his home, separated from his sister at the age of 10, right? He fought in the Second World War. Like, I learned all of this in recovery, gift of recovery. Shaving him one day, he was telling me his stories. And it gave me real insight as to the trauma that he experienced as a child, right? Imagine being 10 in the First World War, being evacuated, not knowing where your sister was, not knowing where your mum was, not knowing where your dad was, put into a stranger's home. Am I ever going to see them again? They did, but, you know, I could go into war stories, but I won't. It's like, but like, that was such a gift for me in recovery. And we're so self-centered when we're younger. We're not thinking about that. They're like, why aren't you giving me this? Why aren't you doing, you know, like, it's just the me. Anyway, gone off course. So this set of steps, I'm really getting in touch with feeling feelings of abandonment, historical. I have a higher power today. You know, I've been learning to reparent myself. And these are just, you know, you hear this stuff, but it wasn't something that I've always connected with. I didn't feel like I was being abandoned in a relationship. And now I'm really feeling that stuff. I feel the feelings of abandonment. I'm not talking about a particular relationship. I found work really painful because because I'm so raw with this younger stuff, I'm reacting in like professional meetings. Like silently, I'm reacting. My face might say something. You know, I've been doing some inventory recently, like a mini inventory within my step 4. Thanks. And when my sponsor strips it down, something isn't going my way in the work partnership. Like when she said that to me, I was like, shame. Like I had made it into this big thing. And she was like, no, it's just something's not going your way, Sophie. And I'm 54. It's just not going my way. You know, and I will shame spiral in that. I will. And that's where my disease comes up. My expectations floor me every time. I've had to put a boundary in with a family member recently. It's really hard. It's kind of been a long time coming. I was estranged from my family when I came into recovery. It was 3.5 years before I saw my parents. I got to make years of living amends to my dad before he died in 2020, and I'm still doing the living amends to my mum. I wouldn't have envisaged at 22.5 years clean that I would have to put a boundary in with a family member. I just can't see them. Like, it's like a 360. They couldn't see me because of the harm I was causing in my active addiction. They're not in active addiction. They're just very unwell. You know, the disease of addiction hasn't manifested in drugs for them. They grew up in a dysfunctional family and they're reenacting that dysfunction with their children. And it's and what I see here is reenacting our childhood. So I'm so triggered, I've had to remove myself. And also I won't watch them do what they're doing to their children. And so there's fucking loads of imagery around that in my step 4. And it was learning, you know, my sponsor was like, don't write this narrative about her, just write what it is you don't like. So it's like, she does things I don't agree with, she lets me down, she treats me like shit, doesn't take my feelings into account, me, you know, she disappoints me, well, she does, she's really cold, she's loveless, she hates me, you know, and it's like, so then I look at my part where I stay silent, I avoid conflict. She's not actually anybody I feel emotionally safe around, which is why I stay silent. And I've made her my higher power. Like when my sponsor said that to me, I'm like, what? You know, and it's like, but this is where where the constant more is being revealed. And because my family dysfunction, part of that was about withholding, it was about punishing, it was conditional. I'm in real conflict. That comes up for me when I'm setting this boundary. But in a recovery bubble, it's like, no, I'm actually looking after myself. And I don't need to be, and my sponsor says this, you know, I don't need to be around that. And you know, and again, it's like what I envisage to the reality is actually for a few years, I time the amount of time I spend around my family. Because I've learned about self-love and I've learned about boundaries, and it's the balance of, I really like to see my family. I'm not without love for them. You know, they stuck by me a lot when I was unwell, you know. But I cannot be around that dysfunction. That's what I've learned this year. I cannot be around it. But that really tears me in two. And, she happens to be the mother of my 2 twin nieces who I am so close to. So there's another layer to it. But, what I'm really grateful for, because I'm going to run out of time in 30-ish seconds, is I have this programme. As much as I bounce off the walls when I write, what I have faith and trust about is that I know the freedom. There's freedom as soon as I write, because of the awareness and what's being revealed. As soon as that's revealed, I can then change my behaviour, or I can put in a boundary, or I can move from a defect to a spiritual principle. And thank God I have the concept of a just for today programme. That took about 7 years for that to drop from there to there. So again, this is a journey, it's a process, it's not a race. And sometimes I cringe when I hear myself saying these cliches, but they're true. It's like the more we go into recovery, the more we think we know, the less we know. And so that practice of staying humble, open-minded, I couldn't say I don't know. I couldn't say I don't know and I'm sorry in early recovery. They were just not part of my vocabulary. And they are part of my vocabulary today. Thank God, Because my sponsor, and I'll finish on this, I could just go on and on. But like a few years ago when I was reading out a step, I was going, yeah, I know. She was like, Sophie, shut up. You don't know. I was like, okay. It's like, I love my sponsor, I in the very short space of time, I had about 18 months without a sponsor about 9 years ago. And I felt completely untethered. I'd never been without a sponsor. So my suggestion is if you don't have a sponsor, get a sponsor. Stay tethered. Keep yourself in the middle of the fellowship. Sitting in this meeting, you're doing a 1, 2 and 3 and a 12, actually. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. It's